In 2020, the British Museum acquired a group of 103 drawings by the Japanese artist Katsushika Hokusai. And today, I'm very pleased to be taking you on a special highlights tour of our latest exhibition, all about the drawings, sponsored by the Asahi Shimbun. Hokusai, the Great Picture Book of Everything. Hello, my name is Alfred Haft. I'm the curator of the exhibition Hokusai, the Great Picture Book of Everything, and it's a thrill working with Hokusai's wonderful illustrations in such depth. It is a rather unusual show for a museum. It's as though you have a book laid out in front of you, waiting for you to peruse. A book that, sadly for Hokusai, was never published, but thankfully for us, has preserved an incredibly rare set of illustrations from the hand of Hokusai himself. Produced during the 1820s to 40s for a woodblock printed picture encyclopedia, the 103 drawings should have been destroyed during the printing process. They are very rare and only survive because the book was never published. In this period, the Edo period, all publications were done by woodblock, in which process a drawing is pasted face down onto a piece of wood, and the block cutter takes his chisel and cuts right through the paper, removing all of the areas between the lines in a drawing. But of course, that means that the drawing is destroyed in the process. And that means that every print that you see, every book that you see produced in Japan during the Edo period, all of the artist's drawings in every case have been lost. And that is simply the sacrifice that was made. Hokusai's books were sold in urban bookstores and reached the provinces through traveling libraries. Aspiring painters across the country studied his art materials. His warrior tales appealed to anyone interested in adventure, including adults, and his poetry books addressed an educated readership. Picture encyclopedias, such as the Great Picture Book, were used to teach children. In these exceptional drawings, recently acquired by the British Museum, Hokusai reinvents the dry, matter-of-fact East Asian picture encyclopedia with humor and a sense of adventure. Hokusai lived towards the end of the Edo period, which ran from 1615 to 1868, during which the shogun's military government banned foreign travel. Encyclopedias, such as the Great Picture Book of Everything, introduced Japanese people to the faraway places they could not visit. 2 letters from Hokusai to his publisher, Suzambo, indicate that the artist was still working on the Great Picture Book into his final years, when he was living in Edo, modern Tokyo, with his artist daughter, Oi. Hokusai's drawings cover 3 main topics: the natural world, Buddhist India, and where we're going next is to ancient China. So the first part of the exhibition is about China and the world beyond China, and it has 2 parts, which I think of as myth and history. Commercial trade connected China and Japan during the Edo period, but China was also a source of ancient lore and tradition. In Hokusai's day, the prevailing ethical system was Confucianism. In keeping with that system, the drawings include illustrations of loyal advisors or men of principle, such as Yun Zhongzi, who tries to warn King Zhou of the Shang dynasty that his mysterious concubine is actually a 1,000-year-old evil fox spirit in disguise. Here, with his assistant Lei Jun, Yun uses a magic mirror to reveal the fox's true appearance. Once you've seen this drawing here, keep an eye out for the story because it appears twice more in the exhibition, once in a print and once in another drawing in the India section. This drawing depicts Shi Wangmu, who is known as the Queen Mother of the West. Shi Wangmu rides a royal carriage accompanied by female attendants on Mount Kunlun. She is the goddess of prosperity and longevity, worshipped widely in East Asia. So there are several reasons for having selected this drawing to highlight. One is simply that it is a favorite among the Japanese curators at the museum. Another is that it is beautifully detailed and atmospheric, because as you can see, the dots disperse as they rise up the drawing, and you get a sense of light filtering through the mist, a sense of sparkling mist, which is very appropriate for an immortal living on an imaginary mountain. So here are a group of 6 drawings which depict the beginnings of human civilization. They cover such subjects as music, weights and measures, the origins of medicine, the origins of alcohol, which would have been rice wine at the time, the origins of using fire to cook, and the origins of publishing, and the making of paper and the making of ink. All of these aspects of human civilization that we perhaps take for granted are designated as inventions, as divine gifts. What I would like to mention is that these drawings, the 103 drawings, arrived at the museum in no particular order, and part of the puzzle has been to figure out how to organize them. So now let's take a look at some of the drawings in the India section. Unlike China, with which Japan had direct connections, the interest in India here is a byproduct of the interest in Buddhism. India was a foreign land, which was the source of Buddhism and a place that no Japanese of the time could have visited. So these drawings are all about the stories that are found in the Buddhist texts, the sutras. We do not know how Hokusai studied Buddhism in ancient India, but he is known to have chanted the Lotus Sutra and to have kept a Buddhist shrine at home. Avalokiteshvara, or Kannon in Japanese, the Buddhist deity of compassion, is believed to have 33 different forms. Here, as dragon head Avalokiteshvara, the deity appears seated on the head of a flying dragon. In his drawing, Hokusai has combined 2 types of brushwork: formal lines to depict the deity, and more informal brush marks for the dragon and atmospheric clouds. So Hokusai's interest in the sort of expressive qualities of different kinds of brushwork applies in several cases in the drawings. So for example, in a drawing which depicts the grand architect and originator of sculpture in India, the Hindu god Vishvakarman, who has carved a sculpture of the Buddha. But what is interesting is the difference in the way Hokusai has depicted the sculpture versus the figures. The figures are drawn with lines, and the sculpture is depicted with what are called nail head brush strokes. Hokusai has used brush strokes that are usually used for landscape to depict a roughly cut wooden figure. So in this way, we can see how Hokusai uses different kinds of brush strokes for different kinds of expressive purposes. In this drawing, we see Maud Galyayana subduing a wild beast similar to a giant ox. He will use the beast's skin to make a drum. This story may relate to a Buddhist folktale about an ox that sacrificed its own skin so that the Buddha could make a drum to scare off a tiger. The disciples' bent profile mirrors the silhouette of the tamed creature. And with that drawing in mind, and with oxes in mind, let's move on to the drawings of the natural world. Hokusai's drawings of the natural world come closest to the example of earlier encyclopedias, but his animals and birds engage the viewer with a distinctive penetrating gaze. The British Museum's drawings for the Great Picture Book cover mythical beasts, land animals, and birds, with only 4 illustrations of plants and minerals. In this expertly detailed drawing, Hokusai pairs a soaring bird of paradise at the top with the mythical Chinese Jianjian at the bottom, a conjoined husband and wife bird with shared wings. The deft brushstrokes suggest the airiness of the bird's feathers, as well as their otherworldly freedom and grace. This bold, dynamic work seems an apt expression of Hokusai's own unfettered imagination. Skillfully compressed into a small frame, the composition would retain its integrity on almost any scale. Here, in the undergrowth, near human habitation, a weasel sinks its teeth into a rat beside a flowering begonia. The discarded roof tile, with a triple comma design, may place this animated scene in the vicinity of an official's residence or perhaps a temple, and it has something of the suggestion of nature red in tooth and claw. And we may notice Hokusai here has taken a piece of paper and pasted it over a section of drawing that he didn't think was quite right. The drawing itself didn't have to look absolutely beautiful because it isn't in itself a finished work. It was meant as a tool to be pasted onto the woodblock. And I'd like also to just mention a drawing that I personally like, which is the bear under the waterfall. A drawing that I've already discussed in a Curator's Corner, but comments on that video have taught me that the bear turns out to be an Asian bear, which is identifiable by the white mark on its front. But what I love about the bear is its patience and its sense of being perfectly contented in this pouring waterfall. So as you look at this drawing, you may notice the claw-like character of the wave crests, and that brings me to the last section of this tour, which is a discussion of the Great Wave. So this is the last section of the tour in which we learn a little bit about the differences between earlier and later impressions of the Great Wave. The Great Wave may be familiar to you. It is one of Hokusai's most famous designs and probably the most famous work of Japanese art in the world. It depicts 3 fishing boats that are battling a giant storm wave which is bearing down on them. The beauty of the print is the figure of Mount Fuji, still and in the distance, as a kind of anchor to the chaos of the scene. It comes from a series called The 36 Views of Mount Fuji, which has made Hokusai almost a household name. In this section of the exhibition, we get to learn about the work of my colleague, Capucine Kornberg, who is a scientist at the British Museum, who has been diligently looking for every known copy of the Great Wave in museums and public collections around the world, and she's turned up 111 of them and tracked how they differ from one another. But she is the best person to explain how that all works.
My name is Capucine Kornberg, and I'm a scientist at the British Museum. I spent about 50 hours just looking at Hokusai's Great Wave. This is about the same amount of time you would spend brushing your teeth over 2 years. There's not just one impression of the Great Wave, as many people think. There were originally thousands of them. Experts think that at least 8,000 prints of the Great Wave were pulled from the wood blocks and sold. And possibly prints were made until the wood blocks just started to be so worn out that they couldn't be used anymore. And prints are not numbered or dated. So if you want to know if a print comes from an early edition or from a late edition, you have to look into details at them. The British Museum is actually lucky enough to have 3 prints of the Great Wave. I've decided to show you this one because it shows the most sign of woodblock wear. So it's not the most pristine one, because we've got one that shows very little sign of woodblock wear, but here you can see what I'm talking about. The color woodblocks were made actually in a less durable wood, so sometimes they had to be replaced. The light blue woodblock at some point got lost, or they decided it was too damaged to be used, and they recut. Someone recut it. But the shape of this new woodblock was completely different from the original one, and nobody understands why this is the case. Why didn't they try to make something quite faithful to the original design? What I'm really interested in is to try to find out what the print looked like when it was pristine, when it had not been faded at all by light. Other things that are quite interesting is also the paper on which the print was printed. All the scientific analysis we do on objects, they have to be non-destructive. So we have to be quite resourceful. So what we think we're allowed with is to take just a fiber. So we want to identify a colorant just by analyzing a tiny, tiny quantity of it. This is micro-destructive, so it's a very small element, very small amount of material, and it could tell us a lot about it.
Thank you very much for staying through this tour. Hokusai is, we believe, one of Japan's greatest artists. We hope that this exhibition will show you his great imagination, his great skill, his technical abilities, and his invention in composition and subject matter, and will inspire you to, if not see the exhibition, perhaps to study more of Hokusai, perhaps look at more of Japanese art, and if possible to visit the galleries here at the British Museum, where we have a fantastic collection of Japanese art. There is also a wonderful book by Timothy Clark called Hokusai, the Great Picture Book of Everything, which includes every single one of the drawings and gives much more historical background and detail on the drawings themselves and also the research that has gone into them. That is the first time that this set of drawings has ever been published, and hopefully would have been of appeal to Hokusai as well.